I stayed quiet when she cheated, but I secretly exposed her lover's $1 million scam, watched their world collapse, and reclaimed my life without mercy. This is how a cheated man strikes back. Lena stopped looking me in the eye 3 months ago, and that's when I knew our marriage was a house of cards waiting for a breeze. I'm Ethan Marks, mid-37, an architect who designs thoughtful spaces, clean lines, open light, places that feel alive. Lena, my wife, plans high-end events, a charismatic whirlwind who can charm anyone into believing she's theirs. We live in Austin, Texas, in a glass and steel house in a neighborhood where creativity hangs in the air like cedar smoke. 10 years ago, we built this life together. Jazz, bourbon, a shared obsession with making something beautiful. Now, it feels like a stage play, and I'm the only one who's forgotten the lines. That night, we sat at the kitchen island, a concrete slab we'd chosen back when every choice mattered. I held a glass of bourbon, our New Orleans find, while she scrolled her phone, nails tapping too fast to mean nothing. "Client texting about tomorrow's gala," she said, eyes fixed on the screen. Her voice was light, practiced. I nodded, though she didn't notice. The silence between us wasn't new, but it had weight now, a third presence I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just the eye contact or the lack of it. It was the way she'd drift through conversations, her answers clipped and distracted. "How was your day?" I'd ask. "Fine, busy," she'd say, flipping through a magazine she didn't read. Long silences stretched between us, heavy and uninvited. I'd watch her, not staring, just observing, calm, introspective, piecing it together like blueprints for a building I didn't want to finish. We'd met at a jazz club, her in a red dress, me sketching on a napkin. She'd grinned, said I was wasting talent, and by midnight we were sharing bourbon and talking Miles Davis. Our first apartment was a dump, peeling paint, secondhand art, a deer sculpture we laughed about. But it was ours. We'd built careers together, me with my designs, her with her galas. Jazz and bourbon became our code, a thread through anniversaries and late-night dreams. 10 years later, that thread was fraying. She'd grown unreachable, late events, client dinners, excuses stacking up like unpaid bills. "Busy season," she'd say, heels clicking past me to the shower, her perfume tinged with cigarette smoke I didn't recognize. That night, I tested her. "Big event tomorrow?" I asked, voice even. She nodded, still scrolling. "Tech guy's launch party, huge headache." She didn't look up. "You've been out late a lot," I said, not accusing, just noting. Her fingers paused, then resumed. "You know how it is," she replied, too bright, too brittle. "Gotta keep the clients happy." I didn't push. I don't storm or shout. I watch, I listen. But as she stood, stretching with a yawn that felt staged, I saw it. A flicker of guardedness, a wall she hadn't needed with me before. She kissed my forehead, quick, weightless, and vanished upstairs. I stayed, bourbon in hand, the house too still. The cracks were there, no eye contact, silences, distracted lie. I thought of our past, the rooftop dance in a thunderstorm, the apartment we'd filled with love, and the woman who now slipped away. Artificial, shallow, the marriage I'd built was crumbling, and I couldn't unsee it. The hotel receipt was a shard of glass under my foot, small, sharp, impossible to ignore. I found it 2 days after that night at the kitchen island, tucked beneath Lena's makeup case on our bathroom counter. The case was a sleek black thing she'd bought after her first big event, back when we'd celebrated with takeout and a jazz playlist. Now, it hid secrets. The receipt was from the Driscoll, a boutique hotel downtown where we'd spent anniversaries. $247 for a Friday night, 3 weeks ago. She'd told me she was at a client's venue that night, working late. I stood there staring at the crumpled paper, the bourbon in my stomach turning sour. I didn't confront her right away. I'm not built for explosions. I pieced things together, let the weight settle. But the doubt took root, a quiet weed curling through my thoughts. I started noticing the lies, small at first, like cracks in a foundation. "Who were you with last night?" I'd ask over coffee, casual as breathing. "Oh, just the usual crew, Sarah, the catering guy," except Sarah had posted a photo from Houston that night, and Lena's phone had been off when I'd texted at 10. "Where were you yesterday?" I'd try, handing her a towel after her shower. "Running errands, downtown," she'd reply, eyes on the floor. But her car's mileage hadn't budged, and her purse smelled like bar smoke. The lies piled up, each one a pebble on a scale tipping towards something I didn't want to name. She'd say she didn't answer texts because her phone died, but it was always charged when she came home. She'd claim a meeting ran late, but her heels were spotless, no trace of the gravel lot she said she'd parked in. I watched her closer now, not out of paranoia but necessity. The woman who'd once told me everything, her fears, her wins, the way a saxophone solo made her cry, was slipping behind a mask I couldn't pierce. I tried confronting her, subtle as a sketch line. One evening she came home at midnight, her blouse wrinkled, her laugh too loud as she kicked off her shoes. "Rough night?" I asked from the couch, a book in my lap I hadn't read. Yeah, client dinner ran long, she said, heading for the fridge. At the Driscoll? I let the words hang, soft but deliberate, watching her reflection in the glass door. She froze, just for a heartbeat, then turned with a grin. What, you think I'm sneaking off to fancy hotels? You're cute, Ethan. Her laugh was a deflection, bright and hollow, and she brushed past me to grab a water bottle. It's just work, she added, her tone teasing, like I'd imagined the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. She was good at that, gaslighting with a smile. The next night I asked about a text that had buzzed her phone at dinner, the screen lighting up with a name I didn't know. Who's Caleb? I said, keeping it light, pouring her a glass of wine. She took it, shrugged. Some tech guy, new client. Pushy type. Her eyes flicked away and she sipped too fast. He's texting you at 8 p.m., I pressed, still calm. She rolled her eyes playfully. You know how these people are, zero boundaries. Relax, babe. She leaned over, kissed my cheek, and changed the subject to a venue she'd booked. I let it drop, but the name stuck. Caleb. A shadow I couldn't draw yet. The shift was undeniable now. She'd come home later each week, her excuses sharper, her presence thinner. I'd lie awake, hearing her shower run, wondering who she was washing off. The receipt stayed in my desk drawer, a silent witness I couldn't unfind. I thought about the Driskin, our anniversaries there. Her head on my chest. Jazz. Drifting through the room. Had she been there with someone else? The question gnawed, but I didn't ask again. Not yet. Instead, I watched. Her phone stayed locked now, a passcode where there'd never been one. Her answers grew vaguer, her laughter rarer. She'd sit across from me at breakfast, scrolling, and I'd study the way her shoulders tensed when I spoke. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was collecting, building a case in my head like I'd design a structure. Every lie a beam, every dodge a support. The foundation was cracking, and I needed to know how deep it went. That Friday I sat alone in our glass-walled living room, the Austin skyline a haze of lights beyond. Lena had texted she'd be late, another client dinner. I sipped bourbon, the taste bitter now, and wondered when I'd stopped believing her. The doubt wasn't loud, it was steady, a pulse I couldn't shake. She'd turned our marriage into a riddle, and I was left holding the pieces, waiting for the next lie to drop. I came home early that Friday, the weight of the week still clinging to me like damp air, and found a stranger in my dining room drinking my whiskey. The bottle, Japanese, $200, a gift from a client, sat open on the table, its amber contents sloshing in a glass he held too casually. He was leaning back in my chair, one leg crossed over the other, a smirk curling his lips like he'd been waiting for me. Lena sat beside him, her hands folded in her lap, her face a mask of guilt she couldn't hide. The air smelled of his cologne, sharp, expensive, and bourbon I'd been saving for a night that mattered. Ethan, right, he said, voice smooth, arrogant, like he was hosting me in my own house. He stood, all 6 feet of him, broad shoulders filling out a tailored blazer. Caleb Royce, good to finally meet you. He extended a hand I didn't take, then shrugged and sipped the whiskey instead. Lena's told me a lot. Well, not everything, I guess. His laugh was a blade, cutting through the silence. I stayed still, my keys digging into my palm, my pulse steady despite the heat rising in my chest. I looked at Lena. Her hazel eyes met mine for the first time in weeks, but they were wide, pleading, not warm. She didn't speak, just sat there, lips parted like she'd rehearsed this moment and forgotten her lines. Her blouse was the same one from the night she'd claimed a client dinner, wrinkled at the collar. The receipt from the Driscoll flashed in my mind. 3 weeks ago, a Friday like this one. I didn't need to ask. The pieces were falling into place, and Caleb was the hammer breaking them apart. Lena and I are together now, he said, setting the glass down with a deliberate clink. Thought you should hear it straight. No point dragging this out, yeah? He tilted his head, watching me like I was a puzzle he'd already solved. She's been crashing with me mostly, figured it was time to clear the air. His tone was smug, a tech bro swagger that made my jaw tighten. I glanced at Lena again. She flinched, looked down, her fingers twisting a ring, our ring, on her left hand. I should have felt rage, a wildfire tearing through me, but I didn't. I felt cold, sharp, like the edge of a drafting knife. I'm Ethan Marks, calm, introspective, the guy who designs solutions, not tantrums. So I stood there, absorbing it, letting his words settle like dust on a blueprint. You're in my house, I said, voice low, even. Drinking my wife's yours. I paused, locking eyes with him. About to sum it up? Caleb grinned, unfazed. Pretty much. Look, man, no hard feelings. These things happen. Lena's a catch. Smart, gorgeous, knows how to close a deal. We clicked. He leaned forward, elbows on the table like we were negotiating a contract. You're an architect, right? You get it. Sometimes the old design doesn't fit anymore. Time for an upgrade. He winked, and I saw it then. The arrogance, the kind that comes with money and a belief the world bends for you. Lena finally spoke, her voice small, cracking. Ethan, I didn't mean for it to happen like this. It just did. She stood, stepping toward me, then stopped when I didn't move. I was going to tell you, I swear. Her eyes shimmered with tears, but they didn't fall. I studied her. The woman I'd danced with in thunderstorms, the one I'd built this life with, and saw a stranger. The guilt was real, but so was the choice she'd made. How long? I asked, my gaze shifting between them. Caleb answered, too quick. Few months. Started as business, her planning my launch events, me running my startup. One thing led to another. He shrugged, like it was a footnote. Lena nodded, barely, her hands trembling now. I didn't know how to tell you, she whispered. I didn't want to hurt you. I almost laughed, dry, bitter, caught in my throat. Didn't want to hurt me. She'd been lying for months, dodging my questions, sleeping somewhere else while I sat in this house waiting for answers. And now this. Caleb Royce, tech entrepreneur, charming and cocky, lounging in my dining room like he'd already won. I could have thrown him out, smashed the bottle, demanded she leave. But that's not me. I don't react. I strategize. Get out, I said, looking at Caleb, my voice flat but firm. He raised an eyebrow, amused. This is her place too, man. Maybe you should… I cut him off, stepping closer, my height matching his, my calm a wall he couldn't push. You're a guest I didn't invite. Get out. He held my stare, then chuckled, draining the last of the whiskey. Fair enough. See you around, Ethan. He grabbed his jacket, slung it over his shoulder, and sauntered to the door. Lena, you coming? She hesitated, eyes darting between us. I'll stay, she said, barely audible. Caleb smirked, like he'd expected it, and left, the door clicking shut behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Lena sank back into her chair, head in her hands. I'm sorry, she mumbled, voice thick. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I didn't respond. I walked to the table, picked up the empty glass, and set it in the sink. The whiskey bottle stared back at me, half gone, a relic of something we'd lost. I wasn't stunned, not anymore. I was processing, filing it away. Caleb's smug face, Lena's guilt, the months of lies now laid bare. This was the turning point, the moment the cracks became a chasm. And I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let it break me. Caleb's footsteps had barely faded from the hardwood when I made the call. I didn't yell, didn't pace, didn't let the heat in my chest boil over. I stood in the kitchen, the whiskey bottle still open on the counter, and dialed Jackson Vega. An old friend, a lifeline I hadn't needed until now. Lena was upstairs, her muffled sobs filtering through the ceiling, but I tuned them out. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about me, about taking back what I could from the wreckage she'd left. Jackson picked up on the second ring, his voice gravelly, familiar. Ethan? Been a while. You good? He'd always been blunt, a trait I'd valued since college when we'd bonded over late-night sketches and cheap beer. Now, he worked corporate investigations, digging into the dirt of businesses and the people who ran them. Not good, I said, keeping steady. Lena's cheating, some guy named Caleb Royce. I need you to look into him. There was a pause, a rustle of papers, then a low whistle. Damn, ma'am. Sorry, what's the angle? Tech entrepreneur, I said, staring at the sink where Caleb's glass sat unwashed. Runs a startup, probably shady. He's in my house tonight, drinking my whiskey, telling me they're together. I want everything, his deals, his money, his weak spots. Jackson didn't hesitate. Got it. Give me a few days. You holding up? I exhaled slow. I didn't lash out because that's not who I am. I'm Ethan Marks, architect, planner, the guy who sees the structure beneath the chaos. Caleb thought he'd won, strutting out with that smirk, and Lena thought tears could patch the hole she'd blown through us. They were wrong. I wasn't going to scream or beg. I was going to build a way out, brick by careful brick. Jackson was step one, a lens into Caleb's world, a map to his undoing. Lena came downstairs an hour later, her eyes red, her hair tangled like she'd been pulling at it. Ethan, she started, voice shaky, hovering by the stairs. Can we talk? I turned, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Sure, I said, neutrally giving her the floor. She took a breath, stepped closer. I'm so sorry, I messed up, I know that. Caleb, it wasn't planned, he's just intense, and I got caught up. But I don't want to lose us. Her words hung there, fragile, desperate. I studied her, the woman I'd married, the one who'd once lit up rooms in my life, now diminished, grasping. You don't want to lose us, I repeated, slow, letting it sink in. But you've been with him for months, lying to me, bringing him here. She flinched, nodded. I know, it's awful, I'm awful, I'll end it. We can fix this, Ethan. I didn't believe her. Not the tears, not the promises. But I saw an opening, a way to keep her close, to watch them both while Jackson worked. So I softened my stance just enough. Okay, I said, voice low. We'll figure it out. I need time, but I'm not walking away yet. Her face lit up, relief washing over her. Thank you, she whispered, stepping forward to hug me. I let her, my arms loose, my mind already elsewhere. It was a lie, but a useful one. Pretending to forgive her bought me space. Time to dig, to plan, to turn this betrayal into something I could control. She'd go back to Caleb, I was sure of it, but now she'd think I was still in her corner. I'd play the wounded husband, patient and steady, while Jackson peeled back the layers of Caleb Royce. If he was dirty, and I'd bet my last blueprint he was, I'd find it, and I'd use it. That night I lay in bed, Lena curled beside me like nothing had changed. Her breathing steadied, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. I thought about Caleb's smug grin, the way he'd sipped my whiskey like it was his. I thought about Lena's excuses, the hotel receipt, the months of silence. Anger simmered, but I tamped it down. This wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about power, about knowing more than they thought I did. The next morning she was softer, almost like the old Lena, making coffee, brushing my arm as she passed. I'm meeting a client today, she said, casual, testing the waters. Back by dinner? I nodded, sipping my mug. Sounds good. I didn't ask who, didn't push. I'd let her think the storm had passed. Meanwhile, Jackson texted, Red Flags, 34, CEO of Royce Tech, already seeing red flags, shell companies, weird transfers, digging deeper. I locked my phone, set it face down and smiled at Lena as she left. The game was on, and they didn't even know I'd started playing. Jackson called me 4 days later, his voice crackling through the phone like he'd just chain-smoked his way through a lead. Caleb's a mess, Ethan, he said, no preamble. Roytech's a front startup's bleeding cash, and he's laundering it through shell companies. Got a big one registered under Lena's name, Events LLC. She's tied in, whether she knows it or not. I stood in my office, blueprints spread across the desk, the Austin skyline gray beyond the glass. She's a co-signer, I asked, keeping my tone even. Yep, Jackson said. Documents filed 6 months ago. Her signature's on it. If this blows up, she's on the hook too. I hung up, the weight of it settling like concrete. Lena, my wife, the one who'd sat silent while Caleb drank my whiskey, wasn't just cheating, she was complicit, maybe oblivious, in a financial scam. LM, Events LLC. It sounded like her event planning gig, but 6 months ago? That was before the late nights got blatant, before the lies thickened. Had she known? I didn't care. Not yet. What mattered was the lever. Caleb was dirty, and Lena was his anchor, whether she'd meant to be or not. I had them both now. I kept it quiet, playing the part I'd started, forgiving husband, patient fixer. Lena was softer since our talk, tiptoeing around me like I might bolt. She'd cook breakfast, linger at the table, ask about my projects with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'd nod, sip coffee, let her think we were mending. But I was watching, waiting, planting seeds. That night she came home late, 11 p.m., heels in hand, hair mussed. Client meeting, she said, dropping her bag. I leaned against the counter, casual. Long one. Everything okay with the business? Her eyes flicked up, wary, then softened. Yeah, just stressful, big launch coming up. She grabbed a glass, filled it with water, her back to me. I stepped closer, voice low. You ever check the paperwork, make sure it's all clean? She turned, frowning. What do you mean? I shrugged like it was nothing. Just stuff you hear, tech guys cutting corners, dragging partners down. Wouldn't want you caught in that. Her hand tightened on the glass, a flash of doubt crossing her face. It's fine, she said, too quick. Caleb's got it handled. I didn't push, just nodded, let it sit. She went upstairs, but I saw it, the crack in her confidence, the seed taking root. Over the next few days I kept it up, subtle jabs disguised as concern. Heard about a startup bust downtown, I'd say over dinner, flipping through a tablet. Money laundering, shell accounts, messy. She'd pause, fork hovering, then murmur, that's not Caleb, but her voice wavered, and she'd check her phone more. I'd catch her staring out the window, chewing her lip, the charisma fading into something frayed. Jackson sent more. Bank records, emails, a trail of funds looping through LM. Events LLC to offshore accounts. Caleb was siphoning investor cash, millions, while Lena's name sat on the paperwork like a signature on a guillotine. He's sloppy, Jackson texted. Couple weeks, I'll have enough to sink him. Feds might beat me to it if this leaks. I locked the files in my desk, the evidence stacking like blueprints for a trap. Caleb didn't know I was coming, and Lena was starting to feel the walls closing in. She unraveled fast. One night she snapped at me over nothing, spilled coffee, a barked "can you not" that hung in the air. "Sorry," she muttered after rubbing her temples. "Just tired." But it wasn't tiredness. It was fear creeping in. The next day she came home early, pale, clutching her bag like it held a lifeline. "Rough one?" I asked, sketching at the table. She nodded, distracted. "Yeah, clients freaking out, money stuff. I don't know." Her voice trembled, and I saw it. She was doubting Caleb, maybe herself. I leaned in then, gentle but pointed. "You sure he's legit, Lena? Guys like that, tech hotshots. They promise big, but sometimes it's smoke. You're too smart to get burned." She stared at me, eyes wide, then looked away. "He's fine," she said, but it was weak, a reflex. She poured wine, downed half the glass, and I knew she was replaying every meeting, every signature. That night, I heard her on the phone in the guest room, voice low, urgent. She cut off, silence then pacing. She was cracking, and I hadn't even shown my hand. By week's end, she was a shadow, jumpy, quiet, her phone buzzing nonstop. Jude ignore. "Everything okay?" I'd ask, pouring her coffee. "Yeah," she'd lie, forcing a smile. But her hands shook, and she'd stare at nothing, lost. Jackson's last update sealed it. Lena's account's active. $500. Caleb was the architect of his own collapse, and Lena was the loose thread I'd pull to unravel him. She didn't know it yet, but she was complicit, and the guilt was eating her alive. I stayed calm, kept the mask on. She'd lean on me soon, try to confess maybe, or beg for help. I'd listen, nod, let her think I'd save her. But I wouldn't. This was about power now, and I had it. Caleb thought he'd taken my life. Lena thought she could walk it back. They were both wrong. The shift had happened, silent and sure, and I was ready to tighten the screws. Lena was breaking, and I was ready to finish it. Her late-night pacing, her trembling hands. They were signs of a wall crumbling, and I'd built the pressure brick by brick. Jackson's file sat locked in my desk. Caleb's laundering, Lena's signature on LMFNW. Invents, LLC, a $500 K transfer tying her to his sinking ship. She didn't know I had it all, but she felt the noose tightening. I needed one more piece, someone who knew Caleb's cracks better than his balance sheet. That's when Jackson brought in Ariel. "Ex-girlfriend," he said over coffee at a diner downtown, sliding a photo across the table. Ariel Kane, 29, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that cut through the grainy image. Dated Caleb 2 years ago. He burned her, used her name on a lease, skipped out when the rent hit. She's pissed and she talked. I studied the photo, the woman who'd been a casualty before me. Jackson grinned, all teeth. "For a price. She's in debt, hates his guts. I'll set it up." Ariel met us the next day in a bar off 6th Street, neon buzzing overhead. She wore a leather jacket, her voice low and bitter as she spilled. "Caleb's a narcissist," she said, nursing a beer. "Thinks he's untouchable. Charming till he's not. He'll sloppy with details, trust too much. Hit him public where his ego lives and he'll fold." She leaned in, eyes glinting. "He ever mentioned me?" "Good," she said. "Means he's scared I'll talk." I paid her $2,000, cashed Jackson's idea, and walked away with a key. Caleb's pride was his Achilles heel. I crafted the trap that night, sketching it like a building plan. A fake business opportunity, big enough to lure Caleb, public enough to expose him. Jackson fed me a script, a new client, Vega Holdings, looking to invest $10 million in Austin tech. I'd play the middleman, draw Caleb into a meeting, then drop the hammer. Ariel's intel shaped the bait, flatter his ego, make him think he'd won again. Lena was the wild card. She'd unravel faster if Caleb fell, so I kept her close, feeding her doubts like slow poison. I called Caleb the next morning, voice smooth, professional. "Ethan Marks," I said when he picked up, his tone wary. "Got a business thing, investor, looking for tech startups. Heard you're the guy. Meeting's Friday, downtown. You in?" He paused, then laughed, cocky. "You serious? After everything?" I stayed cool. "Business isn't personal. Lena says you're good, prove it." He bit, "Yeah, I'm in. Send the details." I hung up, the hook set. Friday came fast. The meeting was at a sleek co-working space, glass walls, exposed brick, a crowd of suits milling around a networking event next door. Public, like Ariel said. Jackson was there, posing as Mr. Vega, gray suit and a fake Rolexer, while I carried the dossier, bank records, emails, photos of Caleb with shady investors, Lena's signature on the shell company docs. Caleb arrived late, blazer sharp, grin wide, shaking hands like he owned. Lena wasn't with him. She'd been home all week, jittery, claiming sick days. "Ethan, my man," he said, clapping my shoulder. "Didn't think you'd pivot to broker. What's the pitch?" I nodded to Jackson, who launched in, gruff, convincing. "Vega Holdings, $10 million to deploy. We like disruptors. Royce Tech's on our radar." Caleb puffed up, leaning back. "Smart move. We're scaling fast. AI draw logistics, next level stuff." "Investors love me," Jackson grunted. "Heard good things. Also heard rumors. Cash flow issues. You solid?" Caleb's smile tightened, but he waved it off. "Growing pains. All startups bleed a little." I slid the fake investment folder across the table. Projections. Terms. A carrot he couldn't ignore. He flipped through it, eyes gleaming, then froze when I pushed the dossier next. "What's this?" he asked, voice sharp. I leaned in, calm as stone. "Due diligence. You're not clean, Caleb. Shell companies, laundered funds." His face drained, the smirk gone. "Bullshit," he snapped, but his hands shook as he opened the dossier. Bank statements, timestamps, a photo of him at the Driftskill with a known fixer. Jackson played it hard. "We don't touch dirty money. Explain this, or we walk," Caleb stammered. "It's misunderstood. I can clear it up." I cut in, voice low, lethal. "You won't. You've got 72 hours to leave Texas and disappear. I go public otherwise. Press, feds. Everyone gets this." He stared, jaw working, then laughed shrill. "You're bluffing. You think you can scare me?" I didn't blink. "I'm not the one sweating. Look around. People are watching. Your move." The room hummed beyond the glass, heads turning as his voice rose. He shoved the dossier back, stood fast, chair scraping. "You're done, Marks. Both of you." But his eyes darted, panicked, and he bolted, shoving through the crowd. Jackson smirked. "He's cooked. Won't last a week." I nodded, the dossier back in my briefcase. Caleb's pride had tripped him. He'd walked in expecting a win, left with a deadline. I'd played the long game, slow and steady, and he'd never seen it coming. Lena was next. She'd hear about this. Word travels fast in Austin. And the trap would close around her too. That night I got home late. Lena was on the couch, phone in hand, face ashen. "Caleb called," she said, voice small. "Said you ambushed him." "What's happening, Ethan?" I set my keys down, met her eyes. "He's in trouble, money stuff, your name's tied to it. You should have checked the paperwork." Her breath hitched, tears welling. "I didn't. I trusted him." "What did you do?" I shrugged, cold. "Just business. He's got 72 hours to run. You might want to think about your next move too." She crumpled, sobbing, but I didn't soften. The trap was set, sprung, and Caleb was gone, or would be soon. Lena was collateral, caught in the web she'd helped weave. I'd given her doubt, then proof, and now the fallout. The power was mine, earned through patience, not rage. I poured a bourbon, mine again, and let her cry, the game finally tipping my way. Caleb vanished by Monday, a ghost chased out of Austin by the 72-hour clock I'd set. Word spread fast. Royce Tech's investors pulled out, whispers of fraud hit the tech blogs, and Lena's phone buzzed with panic she couldn't silence. She sat on the couch that morning, staring at the screen, her face hollowed out by sleeplessness. "He's gone," she said, voice flat like she was testing the words. I stood by the window, coffee in hand, the skyline sharp against a cold dawn. "Told you he'd run," I replied, not turning. She didn't answer, just scrolled, thumbs trembling, as her world started to cave. The collapse came quick. By Tuesday, her accounts, LMM, Events LLC included, flagged up in a federal probe, Jackson's prediction on the nose. She got the call at breakfast, her fork clattering to the plate as a clipped voice on speaker demanded records, dates, signatures. "I didn't know," she kept saying, eyes darting to me like I'd vouch for her. I didn't. I sipped my coffee, watched her fumble through excuses. It was Caleb's idea, I'd just signed, and saw the truth settle. She was in too deep to climb out. The feds didn't care about intent, and neither did I. Her phone stopped ringing after that, not with work anyway. Friends faded first. Sarah texted a vague busy lately, others just ghosted. Colleagues distanced too, her inbox filled with cancellations, postponed indefinitely, the polite dodge of the week. The scandal broke wide Wednesday. A local paper ran, "Roy Tech fraud. Event planner implicated," her name in bold next to Caleb. She read it aloud, voice cracking, then threw the tablet across the room. "This isn't me," she yelled, pacing, hair wild. "I'm not a criminal." I stayed silent, sketching at the table, letting her spiral. She tried clawing back to me then, a lifeline she thought I'd still throw. Thursday night she cooked steak, my favorite, the kitchen thick with garlic in desperation. "Remember when we'd do this?" she said, setting the table with candles, her smile forced. "Just us, no mess?" I nodded, sat, ate. "Yeah," I said, voice even. Long time ago. She reached for my hand. I pulled back, subtle but firm. We can get past this, Ethan, she pressed, eyes wet. I'll fix it. Cut ties. Start over. I chewed, swallowed, met her gaze. You already chose. The tears came Friday, big messy sobs as she knelt by the couch where I read. I was stupid, she choked out, grabbing my arm. Caleb, he swept me up, made me feel, I don't know, I'm sorry, Ethan. I love you. A mascara streaked, her voice raw, but I felt nothing, not anger, not pity, just a wall, built slow and solid over months. I set the book down, looked at her. You love the idea of me, I said calm, the reality. You picked him, Lena, live with it. She froze, then crumpled, crying harder, but I didn't move. She'd built her cage, I wasn't the key. The media storm peaked Saturday. TV news looped Caleb's face, hers a sigh aboard. Local planner caught in fraud net. Her phone lit up with unknown numbers. Reporters, probably. And she turned it off, hands shaking. She tried one last play that night, curling up beside me in bed, her perfume faint, familiar. We could move, she whispered, tracing my chest. Leave Austin, start fresh. I'll do anything. I stared at the ceiling, her warmth a ghost I didn't want. No, I said, simple, final. She rolled away, silent, and I knew she'd felt the door shut. Sunday she broke. I found her in the kitchen, staring at a bottle of wine she hadn't opened, eyes red but dry now. I've lost everything, she said, not looking at me. My career, my friends, you. What do I do? I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Figure it out, I replied, no edge, just fact. You're not my problem anymore. She nodded, slow, like she'd expected it, and something in her shifted, resignation maybe, or the weight of her own choices finally landing. She didn't fight after that. The house grew quiet, her presence a shadow, packing bags, making calls, voice low and defeated. I worked in my office, drafting a new project, the lines clean and sure. Her chaos didn't touch me. I'd stepped out of it, deliberate, controlled. Jankson texted. Feds raided Roytech office. Lena's next if she doesn't cut a deal. I locked the phone. Poured a bourbon, mine, not his, and sipped. She'd spiral alone now, and I'd let her. That night she stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, a last plea in her eyes. I never wanted this, she said, voice small. I don't know what I thought. I looked up from my sketch, steady. You thought you'd win. You didn't. She lingered, then turned, the door clicking shut behind her. The house settled, empty but mine again, and I felt the shift. Not victory, not yet, but a reclaiming. She'd fallen, and I'd stayed standing. Lena came back a week after she'd left, suitcase gone, but desperation heavier than ever. I was in the living room, sketching a new building's sharp angles, open light, when the doorbell cut through the quiet. She stood on the porch, coat damp from a sudden rain, her eyes hollow but searching. Ethan? She said, voice soft, cracked. Can I come in? I stepped aside, not warm, not cold, just a door held open. She walked in, the house swallowing her like a memory it didn't want. She didn't sit, just stood by the couch, twisting her hands. I've been thinking, she started, rain dripping from her hair to the floor. About us, about everything I broke. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking. Please, let's try again. Her voice trembled, but she pushed on, stepping closer. I ended it with Caleb before he left. I've been staying with a friend, figuring things out. I want to fix this, Ethan. Counseling, anything you want. I was lost, but I see it now. I set the pencil down, leaned back in my chair and looked at her. She was smaller somehow, stripped of the charisma that used to fill rooms, her hazel eyes pleading where they'd once dodged. The woman who'd danced with me in storms, who'd built this life with me, was gone, replaced by this fragile shell begging for a reset. I let her words hang, the silence thick. Then spoke, still to stone. You see it now, because you mean it. She flinched, shook her head fast. No, that's not. I love you, Ethan. I messed up, I know, but I love you. We had 10 years. Doesn't that count? Her voice raw, and she knelt by my chair, grabbing my hand. I didn't pull away, not yet. Just watched her, the tears welling, the performance of regret I'd seen coming. It counted, I said slowly, until you threw it out. 10 years doesn't buy you a pass. Trust's a one-way door. Once it shuts, there's no going. Her grip tightened, nails digging in. I'll prove it. I'll do whatever it takes. Quit events, move with you, anything. I was stupid, caught up in him, but it's over. Please. She was crying now, messy, her face streaked with rain and mascara. I studied her. The guilt, the fear, the hope she thought I'd grab. But I felt nothing, not a flicker. I'd spent months watching her lie. Months building my way out. This wasn't a plea. It was a lifeline she didn't deserve. I pulled my hand free, stood, and walked to the window, the rain streaking glass like tears she couldn't claim. You picked him, Lena, I said back to her. Months of lies, his name on your accounts, him in my house. You don't get to walk that back because he's gone, and you're scared. She sobbed behind me, loud, broken. I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost. Don't you ever get lost? Not like that. Not with someone else's life. She stood unsteady, wiping her face. We can rebuild. Therapy, time. I'll earn it back, I swear. Her voice cracked, but there was a thread of defiance, a last push. I shook my head, final. There's nothing to rebuild. You burned it down, and I'm not digging through ashes. You're here because you've got nowhere else, not because you want me. She froze, mouth open, then sank to the couch, head in her hands. You're wrong, she whispered, but it was weak, a lie she couldn't sell. I let her sit there, the silence heavy, until she looked up, eyes red but sharp. What do you want then? To punish me? You won, Ethan. He's gone. I'm ruined. Isn't that enough? I crossed my arms, voice low. This isn't about winning. It's about what's real. You made your choice. I made mine. She stared, then nodded, slow, like something snapped inside. So that's it? 10 years and you're done? I didn't blink. You were done first. She stood, grabbed her coat and moved to the door, but paused, hand on the knob. I'll go, she said quietly. But I'm not giving up. You'll see. I didn't respond, just watched her step into the rain, the door clicking shut. I thought that was it, the end of her fight. I was wrong. 2 days later, I found the proof. My phone pinged with a forwarded email from Jackson, intercepted from Lena's account, sent that morning. Caleb, it read. I need to know you're okay. Ethan won't budge. Tell me what to do. No reply yet, but there it was, her final mistake, reaching for him behind my back even now. I sat at my desk, the dossier still locked away, and felt the last thread snap. She hadn't changed. She'd just switched targets when the ground gave out. I called Jackson. She's emailing Caleb, I said, voice flat. After everything. He whistled low. Dumb move. Feds'll catch that. She's cooked if they trace him. I nodded, though he couldn't see. Yeah, let her dig her hole. I hung up, poured a bourbon, and sat in the quiet. Lena's fate was sealed. Not by me, but by her. She'd pleaded, promised, then betrayed again, and I was done carrying her weight. The rain stopped outside, the house still. She'd come begging, but trust was gone, and I wasn't her savior. That door was shut, locked, and I held the only key. I packed the last box on a Tuesday morning, the house echoing with the kind of quiet that follows a storm. The glass walls caught the sunlight, sharp and clean, but the space felt hollow now, stripped of Lena's laughter, Caleb's arrogance, the life we'd built. I didn't linger. My sketches, books, and a few clothes filled the trunk of my car, the bourbon bottle tucked in last, a relic I'd keep but not open. The rest, furniture, ark, the concrete island we'd chosen together, I left behind. They were hers now, or no one's. I didn't care which. Driving away, I glanced back once. The house stood sleek and modern, a monument to a decade that had ended in ashes. Sadness hit. Not heavy, but real. A thin ache for the nights we'd danced to jazz, the mornings we'd planned our future over coffee. I let it pass, like clouds over the Austin skyline, and kept my eyes on the road. Regret wasn't my baggage, I'd carried enough. Lena was gone, chasing Caleb's ghost or dodging the feds, her fate her own. I'd given her chances, watched her choose wrong, and walked away whole. That was enough. I'm Ethan Marks, mid-30s S, architect of spaces, and now, I suppose, of myself. I don't break, I rebuild. The last year taught me that, not through rage or revenge, but through the quiet work of seeing things clear. Lena's lies, Caleb's smirk, the dossier that sent him running. They were pieces of a puzzle I'd solved, not by shouting but by listening, watching, choosing when to act. Emotional intelligence, they call it. To me, it's just survival, knowing when to hold fast, when to let go. I thought about her as I drove, not with anger but distance. She'd built her world on illusions, Caleb's charm, a life that glittered until it cracked. She'd thought she could have both, me and him, trust and betrayal, until the truth caught up. Caleb was chaos, all flash and no foundation, his arrogance the fault line that brought him down. I was the opposite. Steady, grounded, a man who'd rather draw a solution than burn one. That's why I stood, and they fell. The city blurred past, cedar-scented air through the open window. I wasn't running. Austin was still mine, its pulse in my bones. I'd leased a loft downtown, small but open, a blank page for whatever came next. No grand plans yet, just work, new projects, clean lines, spaces that breathed. I'd lost a marriage, not myself, that was the difference. Lena had chased a fantasy. I'd found my truth, hard-won but solid. I stopped at a coffee shop on Congress Avenue, the kind with exposed brick and mismatched chairs, jazz humming low from a speaker. I carried a journal, not a sketchpad this time. A something new, a place to write what I couldn't draw. I ordered black coffee, sat by the window, and opened the first page. The pen felt heavy, not with doubt but possibility. I didn't write about Lena or Caleb, not directly. Instead, I jotted a line. Resilience isn't revenge, it's choosing to begin again. It wasn't poetry, just fact, and it fit. The shop buzzed around me, students typing, a barista calling names, the city alive outside. I watched it all, calm, present. I'd been betrayed, dismantled, but I wasn't broken. I was reborn, not in a blaze but a quiet shift, the kind that comes when you let go of what no longer holds. Lena had her chaos, Caleb his collapse. I had this, a coffee, a journal, a life I'd shape alone. I sipped, the bitterness sharp but good, and turned the page. The story wasn't over, just mine with them. I'd build again, not from their ashes, but my own strength, and that was freedom enough.